Did you know that before My 600 Pound Life made Steven Assanti famous, he had already built a small fan base of his own?
This looks really yummy.
Back in the mid-2000s, when YouTube was still brand new, Steven, already closing in on 700 pounds, was posting unhinged videos under the name Fat Boy Get Down. This was the kind of content that gets you noticed for all the wrong reasons. People watched, commented, and kept coming back for more. So Steven got exactly what he wanted: attention. While Steven was online chasing that attention, his younger brother Justin was back home dealing with a weight problem of his own.
Every day that passes, Justin ends up more and more like Steven. He's gaining just like his brother did and is already over 600 pounds, and I am worried he's going to end up the same way Steven is now.
To understand how these two brothers got here, we have to go back to where it all started. Steven Assanti was born in December 1981, and his brother Justin came along not long after. From the very beginning, things were far from stable. Their mother struggled with alcoholism, and she and their father argued constantly, creating a home that was chaotic before either boy could even understand why. When their parents finally divorced, Steven was just 11 years old, while Justin was 5 years old, and both boys ended up living with their mother. And that's when things got worse.
At that time, my mom cared more about the alcohol and her boyfriends than us. My mom's boyfriend was very violent.
I was beaten physically by her boyfriend, but my mom knew and she didn't care.
Their mother's boyfriends were often violent. She would also leave the boys home alone for days at a time while she went out partying, leaving out whatever food she could to keep them quiet. But even then, Steven and Justin's experiences weren't the same. Whenever food was left for them, Steven would eat it all before his younger brother even got a bite.
Every time there was food around, before I can eat it, he would already have gobbled it down.
So even as kids, food had already become something Steven controlled and hoarded, while Justin just had to go without. Eventually, their mother left for good, moving away with a new boyfriend and never coming back. So the boys moved in with their father, Steven Sr., and that's where a new pattern began to develop, one that would define the rest of their lives.
I try to keep less food in the house, but Steven wanted pizza all the time. He just fell in love with pizza, and sometimes Steven would take a tantrum fit if he didn't get what he wanted. He was out of control. I just couldn't control him.
Steven was eating 6 to 7 large pizzas a day, and their father, Steven Sr., found it easier to give in than to say no. Steven's pizza habit finally caught up with him while he was already checked into a hospital on a weight loss program.
33-year-old Steven Assanti says his eating addiction is what led him to here, the trunk of his father's SUV with no place to go.
It's an addiction, and I realize that, and it's a disease.
But for the past 80 days, Steven was getting the help he needed at Rhode Island Hospital, where he lost 20 pounds. But after Steven violated his care plan by ordering pizza, Steven said the hospital told him he can no longer stay.
Steven ordered a pizza, got caught, and was kicked out on the spot. It became local news in Rhode Island, and word of it eventually reached the producers of My 600 Pound Life. Both Steven and Justin were contacted about appearing on the show, and both of them said yes. And if you're saying yes to my videos, please take a quick sec to give it a hype, subscribe to the channel, and consider joining as a member. From early access releases to members-only videos and polls, you can influence the topics I cover next. Go on and treat yourself. Dr. Now approves. Even before meeting Steven in person, Dr. Now had already heard enough about him to expect trouble.
Steven Assanti is being transported to my care in Houston right now, and I'm not sure what to expect. From what I understand, he suffers from severe psychological issues that make it problematic to treat him.
What neither brother could have predicted was that just getting from Rhode Island to Houston would turn into its own disaster. It was a multi-day trip, with Steven traveling in a medical RV staffed by a driver and a nurse, while Justin and Dad followed behind in a separate car. It was supposed to take around 30 hours. It ended up taking a lot longer, mostly because of Steven.
Hello?
I want to get something to eat.
Do me a favor. Save the minutes. Quit calling me.
I can't believe he's asking for food again.
Just 2 hours in, Steven was already calling his father demanding food. And he kept it up for the rest of the trip, insisting he wanted to eat at every single restaurant they passed because he didn't know when the next one would come. At one point, the RV hit a pothole, and Steven's bed actually broke underneath him. This forced the crew to slide cinder blocks under it just to keep it steady. By the time they finally reached Houston, Everyone on that trip had had enough of Steven, especially his brother Justin. Justin's time at the facility didn't last long. Right after arriving, Dr. Now wanted to keep him for testing just to check on his heart and overall health, but Justin wasn't interested. He told the staff he didn't need help the way Steven did, even though he was over 600 pounds himself. But the real problem was that Justin hated Steven's guts. For years, Steven had made Justin's life miserable, bullying him constantly, both verbally and physically. So when Steven tried to convince Justin to stay and do the weight loss program together, it only had the reverse effect. Justin didn't want to spend one more day in the same building as his brother.
Get out. You want me to go? Get out. All right. I'm just saying you should stay. Don't be an idiot. No, I hate his guts.
Steven, on the other hand, was just getting started. He weighed in at 730 pounds and began his program with a strict low-calorie diet. And for a while, things looked fine. But that calm didn't last long.
Over the past month, a lot of his pathological behavior started to come out. He's become abusive to hospital staff, and he expects everybody to wait on him hand and foot.
I need somebody in my room immediately. I have been waiting. I want this light off.
He thinks the world should revolve around him like a child does, and that is not acceptable behavior.
Dr. Now had to step in and warn him directly to change his behavior or face consequences. But Steven didn't change. Instead, his behavior got worse.
I never seen any patient like Steven. He asking for pain medicine every 15 minutes, and then he spilled urine on the floor.
Dr. Now finally had enough and kicked him out of the hospital.
If you want to stay in the program, you need to find a place to stay because you're not staying here anymore.
I don't have anywhere else to live.
If you say you have nowhere at all, I will have you drop in homeless shelter in a few minutes. You are finished.
Steven would still be allowed to continue the program, just no longer as a patient inside the hospital. At his final weigh-in before leaving, Steven had actually lost 107 pounds, proof that the diet itself was working. But when he moved into his own apartment, it didn't take long for his old habits to return. He was soon back to demanding pizza and skipping his diet, and his behavior only spiraled from there. He started missing appointments, and when his caregiver couldn't reach him one day, she eventually found him at a local hospital seeking out pain medication. It turned out Steven had been doing this for weeks, hopping between different hospitals to get prescriptions. And by the time Dr. Now caught on, Steven had already started pulling his own hair out.
You miss your doctor's appointment and you are abusing your pain medication and going to all these hospitals. And we have discovered you have done this about 20 times this past month. Do you know how dangerous it is? You need to stop that.
Yeah.
Dr. Now had seen enough. He suspended Steven from the weight loss program entirely and redirected him into a drug rehab program instead. At this point, Dr. Now wasn't just worried about Steven's weight. He was worried the drugs would kill him first, and that had to be dealt with before anything else. Unfortunately, rehab didn't go smoothly either. Steven needed round-the-clock monitoring just to detox safely, and almost immediately he started calling his father begging to leave.
I want to go home from this place. Okay?
Steven, calm down.
They're treating me like a criminal.
You have to calm down.
This is not fair. I'm not an animal.
Stop acting like this. I'm gonna hang up if you don't calm down.
I can't do it.
Freak out all you want. You're not getting any more drugs.
After a rough week of fighting the process every step of the way, he finally completed detox and was sent home. But once he got back to his apartment, things fell apart fast. His relationship with his caregiver, Princess, deteriorated quickly. Things got so bad between them that Steven actually called the police on her.
I need a police officer here immediately, please. My personal care attendant here bought me a TV, okay? She bought it as a gift for me, and now she's trying to take it away from me. She's mad that she's losing her job. It ain't my problem. The TV's not being taken out until we see the proof.
Okay, well, no problem. I'll wait till I get here.
You want to wait?
Of course, because that TV coming with me.
The TV ain't going nowhere. It was a gift.
It was a loaner.
When Princess tried to take back a television that belonged to her care company, Steven refused to hand it over. He later tried to cancel the police report once she made it clear she didn't care and was taking it regardless. That was the last time Steven ever saw her. But losing Princess wasn't even his biggest problem. It was his addiction to painkillers. Steven started doctor hopping again, bouncing between hospitals and emergency rooms to chase prescriptions, sometimes visiting several in the same week. By his next weigh-in, it was clear just how deep he'd fallen back into his drug addiction.
This is a prescription monitoring program with state of Texas. You receive 39 prescriptions from 17 different doctors. We are not allowed to prescribe a pain medication. So your days of abusing system are over.
Okay.
All of that was just in a few months. On top of that, Steven's weight had climbed all the way to 750 pounds, higher than when he'd first walked through Dr. Now's doors. Dr. Now didn't hold back this time. He walked Steven to a mirror and made him look at himself.
Look at yourself. Look at what you have done to your body. Tell me, what do you see?
A big failure?
Look like an elephant's leg. It doesn't look human anymore because what you have done.
And that discomfort was the turning point. For the first time, he took positive steps to improve his health. He threw out all the junk food he'd been stockpiling in his apartment and started walking laps around his apartment complex every day. Eventually, Steven got approved for weight loss surgery, and over the following months, he dropped more than 200 pounds combined. For once, Dr. Now had something positive to say about him.
But you're doing well overall, and I'm glad to see the progress you're making.
Following doctor's orders.
But there's only one other thing I want you to get back in the habit of, and that's going to psychotherapy.
Okay.
Meanwhile, back in Rhode Island, Justin had opened a hobby shop called Hobby Haven. And even though people around him doubted it would last, the store started to find its footing. Running the hobby shop gave Justin a sense of purpose and independence, something he'd never really had a chance to build for himself before.
I'm really excited today because we are finally opening up my hobby store.
This is a big deal for Justin. And with Steven no longer here to bully Justin all day long, he's leaving his room more, and he's made 2 good friends already.
Eventually, Justin decided he wanted weight loss surgery too, and he made the trip to Houston to start the process with Dr. Now.
I've made more drastic changes to my diet, and I'm not making any exceptions to Dr. Now's program.
So, Justin, you lost 47 pounds in a month. I'm putting you for weight loss surgery, okay?
Awesome.
The procedure itself went smoothly, and his recovery seemed to be going just as well. For once, it looked like both brothers were finally moving in the same direction at the same time. Steven had made real progress losing weight, Justin was thriving, and their relationship seemed to be on the mend as well. Steven even visited Justin in the hospital while he recovered, and by most accounts, it went better than anyone expected. But that peace didn't last long. Behind the scenes, Steven had already started slipping again. Justin was recovering at home a few days after his surgery, when Steven came by with their father to visit. It seemed harmless enough at the time, but shortly thereafter, Justin noticed some of his medication was missing. Although he'd been putting on a good show for the cameras, Steven had secretly gone right back to his old habits behind the scenes. And their father had actually been enabling Steven with the medication himself, feeding his drug addiction. Dr. Now caught wind of the accusation, and when Steven came in for his next appointment, the doctor didn't waste any time getting into it.
You are 557 pounds today.
Yes, sir.
That means after doing exceptionally well for the first 2 months, you started gaining again. And the second issue is Justin claimed that you stole his painkillers. I'm not interested in hearing your lies and your excuses. I'm gonna have some tests run on you.
He made it clear that if the results came back positive, that would be the final straw. No more chances after that. While all of this was unfolding, Steve Sr.'s enabling wasn't limited to Steven. When it came time for a joint appointment with both sons, Justin refused. He didn't want to go anywhere near his brother, and said he couldn't stand to even be in the same room. Instead of making Justin follow through and face the appointment like an adult, their father let him skip it entirely.
Justin, come in and sit down, and we'll see him after.
He's not going to do it.
This is ridiculous. There's no reason he can't come in and wait until we're done with Steven.
I'll ask him, but I know.
No. This is part of the problem. You just let these two do whatever they want.
I argued with Justin on the way down here.
Don't go ask him. You tell him that you come in right now. If you give him a choice, he's going to act like that. So you need to act like a father.
And rather than addressing the avoidance, Steven Sr. rewarded it by buying Justin a puppy as a kind of peace offering. It was the same enabling pattern that had followed both brothers their entire lives. 2 years after their first episode aired, the Assanti brothers' paths had gone in completely different directions. Steven was cut from Dr. Now's weight loss program for good after his test results didn't come back clean. And even though getting cut from the program wasn't exactly a shock, what happened next in his life caught a lot of fans completely off guard.
I actually met a woman and I have a girlfriend now. Amazing, right?
Even Steven couldn't quite believe he had a girlfriend, and honestly, neither can I. Her name was Stephanie, and they'd met online. Steven moved to Iowa to live with her and her daughter, and in May 2018, they got married. Steven's relationship with his father and brother must have still been strained, because neither of them showed up to the wedding. That optimistic next chapter of Steven's life didn't last long either. A couple of months into the marriage, Steven reached back out to Dr. Now, hoping to fix his life before his marriage fell apart completely.
I'd like to come back for a while to fix everything, so I can give everyone here a break if she can respect that. But if she wants a divorce, then there's nothing really I can do.
Well, you have to treat people with respect if you want that to change, Steven.
Yeah, I know I do. I'll try, but I do want to throw in the fact that my wife does make me very good meals. It's just that I choose not to eat them and call my dad and get takeout delivery instead.
His wife had been doing everything right on her end, cooking him healthy meals and trying to keep him on track, but Steven's old habits started creeping back in. And, as is usually the case where addiction is concerned, the marriage didn't survive, and the two eventually divorced. After the divorce, Steven became an inconsistent presence on TikTok, where his behavior remained as unpredictable as ever. He's since shut down his main TikTok account and deleted all of his posts. But most of those videos are still floating around online, kept alive by fan accounts that reposted them before he pulled everything down. On top of that, he's lost most of his teeth. These days, he's mostly known for selling personalized videos on Cameo for anywhere between $15 and a few $100s a video, depending on the request. Justin's story went the other way entirely. He continued to grow his business, Hobby Haven, the model and hobby shop he operates in Rhode Island.
I run Hobby Haven, and I just been slowly building up the store, and now it's thriving. The store has been wonders for me.
Since then, Hobby Haven expanded its focus to a tabletop game called Warhammer, where players collect, paint, and battle with small model armies, as that hobby exploded in popularity. On January 3rd, 2025, he married his girlfriend, Lauren, and the couple recently celebrated their first anniversary together. He stayed active on Facebook, with most updates being about the business. However, Justin's personal life recently took an unexpected turn. In July 2026, he shared that his marriage had come to an end, following ongoing struggles with his wife's mental health. While the situation has been understandably difficult for him, he remains focused on the well-being of his stepdaughter and his commitment to his business. And that concludes the saga of the Assanti brothers, although Steven and Justin Assanti's individual stories continue on their own separate paths. One put in the work, away from cameras, and built something real. The other kept chasing attention and old habits, and it cost him almost everything. And through all of it, Steven Sr. was right there in the background, enabling every single step of the way. If you want to see just how far an enabler can take things, we've got a whole video on the most hated enablers on my 600-pound life. A few of them are somehow even worse than Steven Sr., if you can believe it. It's up on your screen now.